Everyone have a seat. All right. Welcome tonight to beautiful First Congregational Church. We really appreciate them being our hosts tonight. I'm Annie Kelly. I am the planning editor from the Battle Creek Inquirer. Some of you here may remember when we were called the Inquirer and News. And back when we were known as the Inquirer and News, there was a journalist called Art Middleton. And Art Middleton was asked, it was back in 1953, what would be a good gift for veterans? So he went to the VA hospital out at Fort Custer, and he asked around, and one veteran had an idea that they would take donations and it would become coupon books that the veterans there who were healing could use in the canteen. And so since that year, in 1953, the Inquirer's name has changed, our faces have changed, but the Remember a Vet campaign has not changed. And the money for the tickets that you bought tonight are going to go to the VA to help veterans still. So thank you again for coming tonight, and I'm going to hand things over to our MC, Sean Washington.
I feel like there should be like the Space Jam theme going on or something. It's amazing. So, hello all. It is good to see folks out in Battle Creek yet again. Man, this feels great. My name is Sean Washington. I'm here. I'm emceeing. I just want to give you a little snippet of what brought us to this place, and we'll get the show started. Some of you may know or have heard, way back when I was in a coffee shop, which is what I do. I'm a coffee drinker. I drink a lot of coffee, quite a lot of coffee. And I was engaged by this young man who I thought was just a fan because, you know, I'm a star now. And he said, hey, I've got this idea. And his idea was about vets. And the fact that we have Veterans Day and we have all these things that we do for vets, but in the end, it's the vets that rarely tell their stories. And that resonated with me because I have a father who never told me his. And I think a lot of us have relatives and family members who have lived these extraordinary lives, but have never shared that with us. And so this event is made specifically to give a space for our local vets to be able to capture that history and allow them to tell their stories so that we can grow from it and we can learn from it. So I hope you enjoy the evening. We have lots of stuff going on, and this time we're starting out with something a little different. I have decided that I should never ever sing in public, but I found someone that should. Coming up to the stage first, we have taking this area and opening our show, we have Victor, who is actually, I've known this guy for an exceptionally long period of time and never realized the amazingness that this man has. He started a nonprofit organization called the Mind, Body, and Soul Foundation, focusing on mentoring, and the guy can sing. Who knew? Coming up now, we have Victor Hillman.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fights o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming. And the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave? 'For the land of liberty and justice, our flag
Thank you.
Is
Well, I bet you are looking at me saying there is no height requirement in the United States Air Force. But imagine this, a 19-year-old boy living right here in Battle Creek, 5 foot nothing, 120 pounds soaking wet, on a plane going to Lackland Air Force Base to be a member of the greatest military service on this earth, the United States Air Force. And I must tell you that the plane ride was outstanding. I got free peanuts and pop. Now, when I got to San Antonio, Texas, the recruiter, by the way, had given me a line. But he said, carry this big brown envelope that has Walker and Basic on it. And make sure that when you walk into the terminal, they see it. So I no more got off the jetway, and I hear, fall in. Fall in? Then I hear another guy that's about 8'9", which stripes all the way down his body. I mean, big. Said, Shorty, get over here. You've been misrouted from a Boy Scout camp. You're too short to be in the United States Air Force. About that time, I thought of Battle Creek. I thought about Mommy. Literally, I wanted to cry. He must have been reading my mind. Because he says, for the next 8 weeks, I'm your mommy, I'm your daddy, I'm your brother, I'm your sister. I'm one step away from God. Whew. Well, it didn't get any better. The bus trip to the base, you can imagine everybody was completely quiet. No one wanted to make Mommy mad. When we got to the base, we pulled up to what the recruiters had told me was a hotel, which was really a barracks. Well, as we got off the bus, Mommy said, run upstairs to the latrine and shave off your sideburns. Well, a latrine, by the way, is a bathroom for you civilians. I'm sorry. But anyway, I ran up there. I had never used a safety razor or a straight razor in my entire life. So, whack, woo, blood squirted everywhere. I took off half my face. Mommy was not happy. Well, after I got my face back, the next stop was the barber shop. No problem. I didn't need much of a haircut. Well, wrong. 30 seconds later, I was completely bald. I mean, completely. I swear I'm going to sue the government. It never grew back. Well, anyway, I went the next stop after that was Chow. I thought we were going to a restaurant. I'm telling you, the recruiter gave me a line. Anyway, we got there, and we got off the bus, and I figured I'd get to the front of the line so that I could eat. I was hungry. So as I got there, lo and behold, Mommy says, if you're taller than the person in front of you, tap him on the shoulder and move up. Well, you know where I went, all the way to the back of the line. And by the way, after this big, long line got through the chow line, of course, they've already eaten. So as I pick up the spoon to take a bite, I hear Mommy say, chow's over, get to the bus. So off to the bus I went, back to the village. This is going to be good. I know I can sleep in the next morning, right? I know. Well, wrong again. By the way, I don't know how they make beds in the United States. I do now, but I didn't know then, that I slept in a short-sheeted bed for 3 days. I thought it was part of the punishment. Of course, I was so little, I'm probably the only person that could sleep in a short-sheeted bed. Anyway, at old dark 30, we got up in the morning at old dark 30, and we ran around the base singing Mommy songs. And, you know, that was real good, except that when we got back, Mommy calls me over and says, "You've been promoted." "Promoted already? You're a dorm guard, or you're a road guard." I said, "Well, what does a road guard do?" "Well, you know, they run out and stop traffic so the rest of the flight can go through." I say, "Well, what if they don't see me?" "Well, they'll run you over. But you will have saved the entire flight. You will be a hero." Oh, well, it even gets better. So I'm thinking, well, maybe if I'm really lucky, maybe something will come about here. This is really starting to irritate me. I was really thinking about Mommy back home. But then I got it. He says, "Are there any volunteers that can play softball?" Says, "Good, you got pots and pans." The moral of that is never volunteer for anything in the military at all. Next trip to the firing range. I can do this. Everyone in the United States Air Force will qualify. Everyone. Great. We get 60 rounds. We fire. Mommy yells, "Minnie." That was my nickname, Minnie. "Minnie, get over here. Look at your target. There's not one hole in your target. Not one." I'm thinking, God, I should have at least had a couple in there. "Why is the target next to you have over 100 and you only have one?" I had shot the wrong target. Mommy was not happy with me. So he says, "I'll tell you what we're going to do. You can have the whole range. You can shoot any target you want. The rest of us are going to stand over here in the sun and wait for you." You can tell I wasn't very popular. But I did qualify. Later on, at basic training, we went out into the woods for 12 hours. Swamps, snakes, spiders for survival training. Everything went great. About 12 hours, we were dead tired. We come back to the barracks, and they had trashed it. Everything was all over. Bedding, boots, you name it, all over. Mommy said, "In 1 hour, we will have an inspection. In 1 hour, this will be right." For 7 weeks, we had worked as a team. In 1 hour, we had to erase all of the personal thing and become a team to make sure we got that together. I think my boots were like size 12. But it didn't matter. We could take care of that later. We just wanted to be a team. So we got that all together. You know, I learned to salute. I learned to stand at attention, a lot of character building. So guess what? After 8 weeks earlier, I left Battle Creek as a boy. 8 weeks later, I left San Antonio, Texas, as a proud airman in the United States Air Force. And as Sergeant Cook, because that's what his name, but wasn't really Mommy, shook my hand at graduation, you could hear him whisper in my ear, "Someday, they're going to make you an officer in the United States Air Force."
On stage, we have Joe Texera.
Imagine for a moment, a 7-year-old boy listening to his father telling him about his World War II experience. Afterwards, I said, "Dad, I want to be a soldier." I said, "What did you do before the war?" He said, "I fought forest fires in Northern California." "Dad, I want to be a fireman." I said,
Son, you can't do both. So, upon graduating high school, I volunteered for Vietnam
Sure.
and joined the Air Force, and they sent me to Air Force Fire School. I accomplished my mission, a soldier and a firefighter. 4 years experience as crash fire rescue. When I was discharged, I became a Battle Creek firefighter. At the same time, I joined the Michigan Air National Guard, did 28 years in the Air Guard on their fire department. So I had 2 missions to accomplish now as a soldier and a firefighter. One of our deployments was a difficult one for me. On August 29th, 2005, Hurricane Katrina blew in on the Gulf Coast. 170-mile-an-hour winds, 1,800 people died. A 55-man team deployed there from my base. 12 of them were my firefighting team that I went with. We had to land at Gulfport Airport before sunset because there was no power. No landing lights, no tower lights. We got in right before sunset. They gave us our MREs. MREs are meals ready to eat. Yum, 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 very good. Got a quick dinner down, and they threw a 12-man tent at us. Usually takes 6 to 8 people to put the 12-man tent together. It took all 12 team members to put it together because there was no lights, no stars, no moon. It was dark. It was darker than dark. We had the flashlights out, and we got the tent up. Next morning we get up, we get out, we got to do a little bit of tweaking on this tent, guys. So we got that done. We reported to the fire station. I met with the fire chief to get our orders, what we're going to be doing. He said, you are going to be fire protection for the whole airport. We have very large cargo planes coming in from all over the world to drop off water bottles, bottles of water, and supplies. We had the largest aircraft in the world land there from Russia. This thing was huge. It was like the size of a football field. We had planes from Japan, from Ukraine, from England, from France, all there to help the U.S., and the Guard was there to help Mississippi. We were there for Mississippi. So several days, we worked 24 hours on and 24 hours off duty. We could do what we want to with our off-duty time. Well, firefighters, we want to save lives and property. That's our mission as a firefighter. So I asked the base commander, I said, can we volunteer to go do search and rescue downtown? He said, go ahead, it's your downtime. So I asked my 12-member team, I said, do you want to go do some search? Yes, let's go. And they were proud to go do that. So I met up with the local fire department. I told them what we wanted to do, and they were proud to have us there. They took us out immediately. First, we went down to the beach on Gulfport. We encountered a 30-foot high debris wall. We start tearing it apart. We're finding kids' toys, pots and pans, clothing. We were looking for live victims, maybe body recoveries. Did not find any in the debris. We got through the debris. We thought we were on the beach. We were still 1.5 miles from the beach. We looked out there, and it was completely devastated. There was nothing there. All that was left was concrete slabs where the houses used to be. And you turn around, and all that debris we just took apart, you realize that was the families that lived on those houses. We continued down the beach, and we encountered the railroad that parallels the beach. Looking at it for miles, it was twisted like pretzels. The power of the waves hitting that, 4 inches of rail just twisted all over the place. We found a cow on the roof of a 2-story house. Full-size cow, dead. But how'd that cow get up there? We found trees, the ones that were still there, all the leaves were gone, that had clothes laying on the trees like somebody laid it out for their laundry. Then we realized that was a 30-foot tidal surge that came in, lifted the cow up onto the roof, lifted those clothes up onto the trees, and when it receded, it hung those clothes up there, and it looked like someone literally just did their laundry. Very unusual seeing that kind of stuff. The nighttime was eerie night. Like I said, there was no lighting around. The stars weren't lit. The moon was no moon. And it was quiet. There was no sound. There was no bugs. You'd think down south, there's got to be mosquitoes here, flies. No flies, no mosquitoes. Didn't see any snakes, no cats or dogs. Everything was gone. On the 7th day, they hatched. We had the black flies and the mosquitoes were back, and they were hungry. Well, one of our days we were at the fire station down at Gulfport. We were taking a break, eating our MRE, good stuff. And an old man walked up in his 90s with a cane, and he says, "Gentlemen, could you help me get my carpeting out of my house?" And we said, "Sure, we'd be glad to." So we walked over to his house, a couple blocks over. And as we're getting closer, I noticed half the house is gone. The other half is leaning. And the fire lieutenant from the local fire department was with me, and I said, "These people can't live here. It's dangerous. It's unsafe." And he agreed. So he went over to talk to the old man. And as he's telling him that they can't live there anymore, the house is going to have to be demolished, tears started running from his eyes. And he said, "My children were born here. They were raised in this house. I can't leave it." We got the Red Cross there, and they convinced him and his wife were both living there. They had to leave so they can demolish the house because it was unsafe. One of the upside of being down there, on a lunch break, we were just getting ready to go back to the base, and a big dump truck shows up, and he's got watermelons. He was an Alabama farmer, and he wanted to bring some fresh fruit over for the families that were devastated from the hurricane. And he was handing them out to the volunteers too. So we was lucky enough to grab one of those watermelons, and we put a hat on him, and we snuck him onto the bus. And the bus driver looks around, he does a head count, and he says, "I think we got one too many here." And they said, "This is Herbie." We named him Herbie. "He's going to be eaten tonight." I said, "Okay, no problem." I can attribute my career in the military to my dad, to what he taught his values to me, transferred them to me. But it also helped my career in the firefighting, because without being in the military, I wouldn't have had my fire career. So the military helped me there, and now I am serving the community. I'm still helping people out in the community. Currently, I am fire chief at Springfield Fire, and I dedicate all that to the military. Thank you.
Get into it. Coming to the stage, we have Kathy Roberts.
Father's Day weekend, 2002, which was a few short months after 9/11, we came home from, my husband and I came home from a soccer tournament weekend in Petoskey, and our newly graduated son said, "I enlisted while you were gone this weekend." What are you thinking? I guess it was his first grown-up thing to do. And from that day on, I've been a military mom. And he actually originally enlisted in the Navy, and he was stationed on the USS John F. Kennedy aircraft carrier. And so he went off to boot camp, and he went off to the Navy, and pretty soon he was approaching his first deployment. And he deployed to the Persian Gulf, and while he was there, our military bombed Fallujah. 80% of the airplanes that went off of that bombed Fallujah went off of the deck of his ship. Also, while he was there, his captain was taken right from duty in the middle of the deployment because a little fishing boat had run into the side of their ship, which is never allowed. And this was right after the USS Cole had been bombed. And they found out later, or so I'm told, that this fishing boat did have some explosives on it too. And it was just a miracle that it didn't take the Kennedy down. So he spent his time in the Navy, and at the 4.5-year point, when he was about ready to get out, he had a pregnant wife, the ship was going to be decommissioned, and he didn't want to get out of the military. So on July 11th, he was in the Navy. On July 12th, he was in the Army. And so he switched services, and he went off to learn how to shoot guns because he hadn't really gotten that training in the Navy. And he then got stationed down in, I think he was in Kentucky, Fort Campbell, Kentucky at that point. So we've gone through one deployment in the Navy, and pretty soon here comes another deployment. And I tell you what, no mom ever says, I want my son to grow up, join the military, and deploy and go to war. That's not what we as moms usually choose for our children. But what a lot of people don't understand is that we as moms and dads and family at home also go through some pretty serious anxiety while our kids are deployed. So he's off on his next deployment, and he actually joined a unit that was already gone. So this one was a really short one. He was only gone for about 4 months this time. And I remember Jake saying, you know, you got the brotherhood, you want to be with the brothers. He got that bug bit to him too. So he wanted to go back. He thought, that 4 months I didn't do anything. And so he volunteered to go about a year later on another deployment. And so this time he was a mechanic, and he went to help start dismantling forward operating bases. And they were taking apart the equipment and making sure that everything was in order to start taking all of our outposts apart and bring all the equipment back into the main places. So he was working on that, and one night, he called me, because he could call me, technology's wonderful, through Google Mail, he could call me, and he called me, 8 o'clock at night at our time, and I got to thinking, this is like 3 in the morning, what's he doing calling me? Well, he said, like a kid always does, Mom, I don't feel good. And you know, he's in his 20s now, Mom, I don't feel good. And I said, well, what's going on, son? And he said, I think I've got some blood in my urine and my stomach hurts. I just don't feel very good. And I said, Mom's instinct, we always know. I said, you need to get to sick bay. He goes, oh, it's 3 in the morning. I'll just wait till sick call. When we get up for sick call, I'll just go then. And I said, I put that firm tone in my voice. I said, you need to go right now. And he's like, okay, I'll go. Well, he did. He went and he woke someone up, and he had him take him down to the emergency room, whatever you call it in the Army, and found out that he was really, really sick. He had a massive infection in his whole body. Everything inside him was infected. Kidney infection, bladder infection. They didn't really ever find out what caused it, but he had everything. His lungs were filled. He was hardly breathing. He had a really high fever. And they told him, if you wouldn't have come in right now, you might not have been alive for sick call in the morning. So they put him in the hospital, and I didn't know what was going on. You know, I told him to go to the doctor. I was hoping that he did. And so pretty soon, I think a whole day went by, and I didn't hear anything. Well, it was the end of the school year, and his kids lived in Florida, and so they were coming for their month to visit with Mimi and Papa in Michigan, and they were with me, and on that Saturday, I went to a graduation open house. My car has Bluetooth on it, and so my phone rang as we're pulling in the parking lot, and it was an ICU doctor from Afghanistan calling me, telling me my son was in critical care. They didn't know if he was going to make it or not. I have my son's 2 children, twins, sitting in my back seat, and it's still, to this day, it profoundly affects me. I had tears running down my face, and the kids are like, Mimi, what's wrong? I'm like, Daddy's really sick. We just need to say a prayer for him. And I just tried to stay strong, and they're like, okay, you know, and they were 6, I think, at the time, and 6-year-olds they kind of believe you when you tell them Daddy's just sick. So we went into the open house, and one of my friends took a look at me, and I looked at her and just lost it. And she took me into the bathroom. Someone distracted the kids, and we didn't know at that time, but the doctor was about ready to put a chest tube in because his lungs were collapsing. So we went on about our business. You know, we didn't know what was really going on, and we didn't hear anything more. I believe it was 2 or 3 days. it was really hard. But I had made contact with one of his friends that was their, I don't know what you call them, but it's an officer that gets all the news about the unit out to everyone. And she finally sent me a message on Facebook and told me she had gone to check on him in the hospital, and she said, I think he's doing a little bit better, but they're gonna ship him out somewhere else because he needs more care. And she hadn't gone to see him for a couple days because she was so scared if she went that she was gonna find him dead. So a couple months before this all happened, I had won a scholarship to go to teacher training in Washington, D.C. And so my husband and I decided, we need to go. We're going to take the kids. We told them we're going to go to the zoo. So they were going to go to the Washington Zoo while I was in training. So we headed towards Pennsylvania, stopped at our one son's house, and then on to Washington, D.C. As we drove into the outskirts of Washington, D.C., we got a call from our son who was doing better, and he was being air flighted from Germany back to the United States. And he was calling to tell us that they were going to stop and land at Andrews Air Force Base outside of Washington, D.C. And he said, I still get shivers about this call too. He said, do you think maybe you could come to the base? And my husband's like, oh no, they're never going to let us on post. It's just not going to work. And I said, come on, we got to try this. So we drive up to the guard shack, and the twins in the back seat, they're such Army brats that they had no questions that we were driving up to a guard base, showing our ID or anything, because we didn't tell them where we were going, because we didn't know if we'd get in. My husband pulled out his driver's license, kind of told the guy what was going on, and he said, sir, would you please pull over up there? And we're sitting in the front seat, and I'm looking at my husband, and he's looking at me, and I said, get out your government ID. He works at the Federal Center. I said, get out your government ID. Show him your government ID. Maybe that'll help. He's like, no, they don't want to know where I work, what I do. I said, just do it. He pulled out his government ID, and the guard saluted him and said, sir, can I send you where you're going? Can I give you directions? What's going on? And afterwards I said, so what rank would you be if you were in the military instead of a civilian employee? He said, I think I'd be a major. And so I said, that's why we just got in. So we proceeded to go on back to the hospital, and we pulled in the parking lot, and we told our grandchildren that we were going to go so that our grandson loves planes, and we said, we're going to go park here, and you can eat your Lunchable, and you can watch the planes take off and land. They believed us. They were 6 years old. So we pull into this parking lot, and they're like, where are the planes? And the back door of the car opens up. And they looked like, who's this guy opening the door? He had lost over 40 pounds in the 2 weeks that he had been sick. And then all of a sudden, my granddaughter's like, Daddy! And they realized that it was their dad. They had never seen him that thin. But he looked like the kid that I sent off to the Navy so many years ago because he had lost so much weight. And so we had a really nice visit, and the whole thing was, this was a Father's Day again, many years after he initially told us that he was going into the military. My husband got to see his son on Father's Day, and my grandchildren got to see their father, who they didn't know if they'd ever see again. And I am currently on my 5th deployment. I'm the mother of Sergeant William Roberts, Captains Daniel and Stacy Roberts, and Warrant Officer Matthew Madison, U.S. Marine Corps. Thank you.
We have coming to the stage T.R. Shaw.
My military career started as a college journalist. I was a journalism major at Central Michigan in the early 1980s. And in that time, it was the dawn of the information age. Al Gore just invented the internet. There wasn't a big job market yet for those in communications. And I'd veered off in one way into public relations, and I wanted to get a job in public relations, but even that was hard to find in the early 80s. And at that time, I started looking into the military. I looked at becoming a Navy public affairs officer. I read about it. I'd looked at the Navy when I was in high school, and I'd kind of always liked the Navy. And I thought, hey, maybe I could do that. So I looked into Navy public affairs, found out it's the smallest community in the Navy, probably the least appreciated, and since it was so early in the information age, nobody knew much about it. And I went to my recruiter, and I told him I wanted to be a public affairs officer. And he says, that's great. He says, I said, well, how do I do that? And he looked into it and found out I had to go in, become a traditional officer, go through officer candidate school, and become a surface warfare officer. And at that point in your career, you can transfer over and become a public affairs officer. Well, that made sense. You had to know the Navy before you can talk about it, before you can promote it, before you can speak for them. So that made sense. I later found out that I could have gotten a direct commission as a public affairs officer, avoided all that. But needless to say, it was going to be interesting. So I applied to officer candidate school. This time, Ronald Reagan was building a 600-ship Navy, and there's a lot of opportunities, and it was an exciting time. We're down to 250 now, but that's another story. Anyways, I applied to officer candidate school and got orders to Newport, Rhode Island to go through OCS. Now, OCS is a training ground for creating officers. It's why probably 85% of all the officers in the Navy go through OCS. Well, I got there with the idea of becoming a public affairs officer. However, I quickly found out that most of my class were all engineers, math majors, science majors, physicists, all that. I was a journalism major. Needless to say, it was tough. I avoided that stuff in college. I was a words person, not a numbers person. Anyways, I get into OCS, and I'm working pretty hard, doing well. It's pretty intense academically. You cover 24 subjects in 16 weeks. And you had stuff you learned on Monday, and you got tested on Thursday. Then you went on to another subject. Things like thermodynamics, propulsion, electrical engineering, navigation. I said, man, I avoided that stuff in college, but I persevered and got through it, struggled, and somebody told me, he says, when you graduate, your bar is going to be as gold as everybody else's. That's fine, that's a good thing. But the final class standing came out about 2 weeks before we graduated. And on the list of graduates, I was second to last in the class. I thought I did well. I thought I did great. I did. I got through because there were some people that didn't. So at least I got through. Doesn't matter where I stood in the class. I'm graduating. However, one thing about that is that when you go by class standing, that determined what was called billet selection night. When you go in and we go into a room and there's a whole board full of ships and assignments, and this is where you pick what job you're going to have in the Navy. And the goal was to become a surface warfare officer, and I'm with people that want to have command of ships, that want to drive ships, that want to fight ships. I wanted to be a public affairs officer. Anyways, I go in toward the end of the night. All the good ships are gone. At that time, the battleship was coming back. The Iowa, the New Jersey, the Wisconsin were all being reactivated, and those all went to the top of the class. Then it went to destroyers, cruisers, frigates, amphibs, auxiliary ships, supply ships, and God forbid the aircraft carrier, because no surface warfare officer wanted to go to an aircraft carrier. So, being at the end of the class, I go into billet selection night, walk in, and there's not much left. A couple aircraft carriers and a tugboat in Bahrain. I looked at that and I just grabbed an aircraft carrier. I said, how bad can it be? So I'm going to an aircraft carrier, a young ensign, fresh out of school, going to an aircraft carrier. This will be exciting. Well, it was. I got there and I'm thinking, what are these people talking about? It's it's a great place. It's fun. It's exciting. It's the center of the battle group. There's a lot of people here, but man, it's really hard being a junior officer on there, especially being a surface junior officer, because the ship is run by aviators, and they're a totally different breed of cat than what you are. So there's always kind of a little combat between the aviators and the surface guys. But the surface guys are the ones that ran the ship. They worked in engineering. They ran the deck. They did all that. The only purpose of an aircraft carrier is to fly planes. There's no warfare system on it. There's nothing on it other than the planes to defend it. But it is exciting, seeing the planes come and go. And I worked my way up to the bridge. And as a junior officer and as a surface warfare officer, you had to stay on bridge watches to get your qualifications and do that. When you get up there, there's 3 primary officers running the bridge. The officer of the deck is what you're aspiring to be. The officer of the deck is the one who runs the ship in the absence of the skipper, who has to keep control of everything going on the ship, be in charge of everything, and take care of everything that's going on the ship during his watch. The other guy is the junior officer of the deck, the JOOD, who is actually the conning officer. He's the guy that's driving the ship. Now, when we're doing flight operations, his sole job is to chase the wind. You have to keep a certain amount of wind over the flight deck to land planes. And his job is to chase a little wind needle, make maneuvers, and keep the ship in the wind. And then there I was, the junior officer of the watch, the JOOW, which is the first watch on the bridge, and you're supposed to be there to learn everything and do all of that. Your only real duty is to stand over this radar and just keep track of ships. If you're out on the ocean, if you see a ship coming up, our horizon was 12 miles where you could see, but our radar went out about 50 miles. So when you got a contact, you had to track that contact and go to your maneuvering board, plot it, figure out its course and speed, all this math again. And the most important thing is figure its closest point of approach, or its CPA. If it's going to cross 1,000 yards ahead of the ship, you've got a problem, and we're going to have to maneuver. If it's going to pass behind us, don't sweat it. So your whole watch, you're plotting ships, tracking ships, and all that. And that's your sole job up there, and to tell the bridge team that we're going to have to maneuver to get a ship coming, and we're going to have to open it, and you have to maneuver to get around it. Problem is, you get out there on the open ocean, you've got these cargo ships going point A to point B, who are, time is money for them. And they may be coming across 30 knots across the ocean. They're not going to move, because they move, they lose time, they lose money. So we have to watch out for them. And their bridge watch team probably is one person who may or may not be awake. So we are always looking out for other ships. So there I am up there driving the radar, keeping track of all the contacts. And this particular watch, I'm standing there. I haven't been up doing this too long, but I've gotten the hang of it, and it's going to be pretty easy. And nothing out there. There's not a thing out there. In fact, we haven't seen another ship in the last 24 hours. I'm looking out over the horizon. Nope, nothing out there. Nope. Just looking out. It's kind of boring standing over there. However, we're in flight ops. Planes are coming and going. Routine, but then there is nothing routine about flight ops. But there I am over there watching the radar, nothing going on, really bored out of my mind. Planes are coming and going. And just kind of looking out the front window. And on the carrier, the bridge is offset to the side. You're on the starboard side, so from the bridge, you look right down the side of the ship, and you can see our bow wake up there from the bridge. So I looked out there, and there's some dolphins out there ahead of us. Looking up, yeah, a couple dolphins. I'm watching those. Cool, you see these every once in a while. No big deal. Then all of a sudden, 3 or 4 dolphins, 5 or 6 dolphins. Man, 10, 15, 20 dolphins. Whoa, I'm going, hey guys, check out all these dolphins down here. Have you ever seen so many? My God, I've never seen that many dolphins out there. Look at, hey guys, take a look at this over here. And nobody's paying any attention to me. And I'm going, wow, this is awesome. I've never seen this many dolphins out here. All of a sudden I hear this from the other side of the bridge. And I look over there, and the captain and the air boss are having a serious discussion. I thought, uh-oh, something's going on. I looked over and studied it for a minute, and I found out that there was an A7 coming in who had lost his hydraulics, and they were trying to figure out how to get him on deck. And I'm over here looking at dolphins. And I'm going, oh, God. So I'm like, okay, shut up. So I got through the rest of the watch, got to the end of the watch. After we got off watch, I got what junior officers have known to love, not really, is the proverbial ass chewing. And man, did I get it. I got my, just about vigilance, attention to detail, situational awareness. It says you can't do that. You make a fool of yourself doing stuff like that. You gotta pay attention. You gotta do what you gotta do. And I says, don't let that happen again. Oh, okay, so I had to take my lumps and all that, but that wasn't the hard part. No, not at all. We got a lot of those. A lot of us junior officers got those all the time. The hard part came a little bit later. Next couple days, I'm walking down the passageway of the ship, past some buddies of mine. Oh, God. I walked in the wardroom for lunch, walked past the table. Oh, God, come on. And I woke up one night, middle of the night, got this knock on my door. I opened up the door, and the messenger of watch was there with a note from the officer of the deck. Just wanted you to know, dolphins to starboard. Oh, my God. I'm like, oh, how do you do this? Well, you know, it's a well-known thing in aviation. You guys that saw Top Gun and all that, aviators all have their call signs. You got Viper, you've got Maverick, you've got Goose. Well, I became, on Ike, the only surface warfare officer with a call sign. I'm Flipper.
So, I remember my wife came up to me and said, so do you think you may be a little rough on the team today? And she may have been right. I come to, most people don't know me because I do a lot of work with youth. And one of the things that I do is I coach a soccer team. And my soccer team this day had been out on the field, and they had we'll say they had performed below my expectations, and I was maybe a little bit more aggressive than I normally would be. I guess from the other side of the field, what it looked like is that their normal and everyday, very supportive and loving soccer coach had turned into the Incredible Hulk, and veins pulsing in my neck, and began to just go and squeeze and yell at kids, and they were not as pleased with me about that. And I can kind of understand that, I suppose. I hadn't been completely honest with them. The reality is, I wasn't a soccer coach because I liked the kids. I was a soccer coach because I liked the uniform. When I was a kid, I grew up afraid. I grew up in this neighborhood that was absolutely amazing. The people in the neighborhood were super nice, they were kind, everything was great in the neighborhood. My problem was, the school that I went to was located a ways away from the neighborhood. So I had to walk in terror from my school back to my home, and I spent a lot of time with anxiety and fear and anxiousness, and it was not the most pleasant of experiences. When I got into 4th grade, I was encouraged to take up an instrument, and I picked flute, which in the early 80s may not have been the best choice I could have made. However, it worked, and I loved it, and they encouraged us to do this thing where we had mass band, and so they would bring all the middle school bands together, and we were going to play the Christmas parade. So they gave us our outfit that we were supposed to wear, and it was a maroon blazer and a white shirt with a mock turtleneck underneath it. And we had to wear black pants and black shoes, and the only shoes I had were my church shoes, which I may not have worn as much as I was supposed to. So they weren't necessarily all that broken in, but in my 8th grade mind, I was like, I'll just break them in on a 3-mile walk. It'll be fine. So we get there, and I look around, and everyone's dressed like I am, and I said, wow, we all look like dorks. All right, well, that that'll be okay. We'll be all right. And it wasn't until we played that first note that I went, oh my. We played that note, and it was just that power and that feeling of like this note that just, the sound that we created. I love that feeling. And I went on to continue to play through middle school and through high school. And by the time I was done, my friends were all getting ready to go off to colleges, and lots of them were playing in bands in colleges, or they were going off on some adventure, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I was kind of confused, and I was trying to figure it out, and I decided that I needed to spend some time figuring out who I was. So I figured the best way to do that would be to follow learn from my dad. My dad was the closest, genetically, was the closest thing to me, and I figured if I could understand his story, I could understand my own. Well, my dad wasn't really one to share his story, so I had to kind of guess at it, and I figured, let me just walk in his shoes. So what I did was, I joined the military like he did. My mom wasn't overly happy with that idea, and I can't say that I really understood the gravity of the decision I made. The point where I took the oath, the point where I showed really my next memory was when I went from this to standing there with my clothes in my hand in my underwear, and two people with guns on the side of me, and they took those guns and they shoved them in my shoulders and squeezed the trigger, and I felt pain. I don't know what the shot was that I got. I still to this very day don't know what they just filled me full of, but I've got a lot of it now because it's in both my arms. And I walked into a 20-man bay, and I'm standing there, and there's 20 people that look just like me, afraid and unsure in their underwear. And so we all got dressed, and I started to watch. And as we put this uniform on, we started to change. Things got different. And what ended up happening is I looked down and I saw U.S. Army there. And it was like the uniforms before, but there was something different. And on my shoulder, I had a flag. And it was different. The feeling was different. And that fear changed to excitement. And that excitement changed to courage. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid anymore. I was part of something. I was part of something bigger than me. And I was no longer the one that needed protection. I was the one that was providing the protection. I held the line. I was something. I had value. And I loved the feeling. I was 18, and I really couldn't put words to that like I can now. But back then, I was like, this is awesome. I like this. But back then, it was an amazing feeling. And I ended up going to a duty station in California. And when I got there, our lieutenant was a runner. And I don't know if you saw this frame, but you can imagine that this frame is not necessarily a running frame. And so I didn't like running, and I said, you know what? Here goes what I need to do. Either I need to learn how to run, and I need to enjoy running. If I'm going to stay in the military, I have got to learn to enjoy running, and I can do this. And so then I got out of the military because I still to this day hate running. And I took my uniform off and I put it in my bag, and I put my bag in my trunk, and I drove back to Battle Creek. And I walked into my mom's house, and I walked upstairs and dropped my bag on the floor that as a child I had played cars on, and I climbed into the exact same bed, laying my head on that exact same pillow that I had laid on for years and years. And I could feel it coming and crawling into bed with me. All that fear and all that anxiety, like I had never left it, it was right back with me, because I had went from being part of something that was humongous, this brotherhood of people that were with me and that were part of me and that never left me alone, but I left them. And I was here, and they were over there holding the line, and I was back here under the umbrella of protection that they were providing. And I felt alone again, and I hated it. And so I started trying to figure out ways to get that feeling back. Like, how do I get back that feeling of being powerful or meaningful or of value to the community? And that brings us to the soccer field, where I'm standing there watching Maggie put rocks in her hat yet again, and my children over there who are playing with a feather, while the other team is blasting the ball into the net 9 times. And I'm having to remind myself, these are not little soldiers. This is not the battlefield. These are kids. And this is a soccer match. And these little people are why I joined. This is what I was protecting. I felt bad about it afterwards, and so I went and bought them candy for the next practice. I don't think they even remembered. Thank you. How do the tellers do that? Oh my God. Man, if you have not had a chance to come up and do this, it is an amazing feeling, but man, I'm going to go out and have a full-on stroke right out there after this. We have Mike Mooney.
That's happened before. It was a typical day. We were in the monsoon. The monsoon is the rainy season in South Vietnam. It rains 4, 5, 6 months in a row, torrential downpour. You're never dry. You're always wet. I'm a 19-year-old soldier. I've been in country about 3 months, 4 months. And I'm a helicopter door gunner. I'm on a Huey helicopter. And I'm a member of a 4-man crew. You have 2 pilots, you have a crew chief, and you have me, the gunner. And basically what my job is, we're on slick helicopters. We transport troops, supplies, and so forth. And I assist in that, but basically what I do is I shoot an M60 machine gun. My purpose of the M60 machine gun is when I go into an LZ, that means landing zone. My machine gun goes out in front of us to the side before we get down, and I'm going to shoot anywhere from 200 or 300 rounds. I just want to take them out, put them out there. If the enemy's out there, I just want to keep his head down. I've been in country about 4 months, like I said. And when you've been in country 4 months and you're a helicopter gunner, you're no longer cherry boy. If you don't know what cherry boy means, that means you're not battle tested. You haven't been battle tested yet. I've been well battle tested. They're no longer a cherry boy. That's just something you earn. I served 10 months of my 19th year in Vietnam, another teenage soldier. I arrived in Vietnam March 23rd, 1967. My DEROS date was March 23rd, 1968. And yes, I saw plenty of Tet at major offensive. If you happen to know what that was, I was there. This typical day, we had 6 infantrymen, and we're up about 1,500 feet. If you're 1,500 feet, small arms, they really can't hit you with small arms. And then 50 caliber will knock you out of the air, but small arms won't. So we have these soldiers, we're on the approach, and we're dropping 1,500 feet. We're going into an LZ. LZ means a landing zone. An LZ can be if you're in the jungle, you clear the foliage, the plant life, everything, so the main rotor doesn't get caught. This LZ is to accommodate anywhere between 1 and 10 helicopters. This typical day is the monsoon, and we're going to light down on a rice paddy dike. A rice paddy dike is, I'm going to say, it's like, think of it as a country road that's well packed down. And it's, I'm going to say 20, 25 feet wide, and it can run 40, 50, 100 yards. And they have these dikes in Vietnam around the rice paddies. The purpose of the dike is when it rains during the monsoon. So when the monsoon, okay, when the monsoon, did I unplug myself, Tom? I'm good? Okay. So when the monsoon comes, what it does, it holds the water in there so the Vietnamese can go out there and plant their rice. So 1,500 feet, we descend. The pilot says, okay, we're receiving enemy contact. There are only 3 of us going in, 3 ships going in. We use the term ships for helicopters. I don't know why, I guess airship, but anyway, they say ships. We're going on the approach. We got enemy contact 600 feet. The pilot says, okay, I want full suppression. So the crew chief and I, we reach over, we're sitting like this, we take the M60 machine gun, and I'm shooting. That's what I do, keep everybody down. We landed on the LZ, and we sit down, this kind of stuff, and as soon as you sit down on these skids, the pilot's on that radio, he says, get them off, get them off, get them off. Well, what do you think I'm trying to do? I'm not taking this, not a picnic, let's get these people out of here. So anyway, we had 3 soldiers that got off to the left side, I had 3 soldiers on my side. One of the soldiers was an RTO, radio transmitting operator. He has a PRC-25, we call it a Prick 25. That's a radio. He's got his rifle, he's got his web belt, he's got his helmet. And he has an antenna that's at least 4 feet tall. And he takes it, and bends it over like that. I have this soldier, second soldier, and the third soldier was a sergeant. I'm thinking he was like a squad leader. Okay, everybody jumps off from the dike into the rice paddy. Now the rice paddy, these guys knee-high, they're in the mud, they're in the muck, and they're running, we're under fire. You're in the monsoon, it's raining, it's a thunderstorm, you got air turbulence, everybody scatters, let's move it, let's move it, let's move it. So everybody gets out of there, we're sitting down. I told the pilot, I said, clear right, which means everybody's out of here. Crew chief, clear left. Let's move. We're target here, you're sitting ducks. The pilot says, we can't lift until we get clear airspace. What's that mean is, if you lift up, you don't want to fly into your own incoming artillery. All right, we're sitting here. This is like an eternity. You're just sitting here. The infantry said, I'm sitting here, I'm going to start shooting at me. So I looked over 30 yards that way. And here is this sergeant and this other soldier. They're standing like this, arms extended, palms out, looking around like this. So they make eye contact to me, and I'm saying, what's your problem? I don't know what. So they're looking at me like, I can't find it, it's gone, it's lost. And I'm thinking to myself, you get all this rotation, you can't hear anything. And I'm looking around my helicopter, and I said, dude, whatever you lost, Sin Lloyd, dude, it's gone, it's gone, you're going without it. So the air turbulence, the water is murky, it's choppy, you can't see anything, and I'm looking around, this kind of stuff. I don't see anything, and these 2 soldiers, they're still looking for something, they're looking to me, I don't know what you're looking for, I can't find it. So we're lifting off, and we're 15, 20 feet up in the air, and I look down off the dike into the dark water, and I see the antenna, this PRC-25 antenna, which is back there, it's now up. And I look down, and I see this olive drab antenna, the tip of it. It looks like a Venetian blind, it's about this wide, it's olive drab in color. It's bobbing up and down. We're lifting off, and I said, oh my God, there's a man that went with that radio. I don't know what's going on. These people are only standing in a foot of water. I don't know what happened. So the young sergeant over there, he looked at me, I looked at him, and I said, point down like this. And he said, what? And I said, down. So we're lifting off. I'm trying to get my radio communication to the pilot. You can't do it. You've got incoming rounds. The enemy shooting rockets at us. You just can't do it. So I released my seatbelt, so I stood up and grabbed the post, and I looked at it, and I said, down there. And I'm still seeing this antenna bobbing. Well, we lift off. I turned around and I looked around the aircraft like this, my helicopter, and this young sergeant looked at me, took his helmet off, took his rifle, took his web belt off, he gave it to the soldier, he walks over, and he's now diving into the water. I said, oh my God, what's going on? I don't understand it. I mean, this how deep is it? It's only. So we lift off, we're heading back to Cu Chi. That was my base camp. I'm in the 116 Assault Helicopter Company out of Cu Chi. And we get a call, the pilot gets a call, okay, we have a dust-off. They need 2 helicopters. Dust-off means medical evacuations. You fly in, these guys have been shot, they've been broken legs, they're dead, whatever. You just go in there, and you pick them up with assistance, and you're flying back to Cu Chi. I said, oh my God. And once I heard that, he said, we dust-offs. I knew exactly what that meant. So we had 2 aircraft, 2 helicopters, we had the same dike. These cameras are coming on. Excuse me. This young sergeant and the radio operator, they walked toward me. I said, oh my God, he's alive. I just knew he was dead. I just knew he was dead. So they climbed on board, get up, we're lifting out now. We're taking hits. We're under fire here. So I'm not very polite about it. I grab them. I'm moving. I'm going to grab you by the ass and by the shoulder. You're getting in here. We're not going to take a lunch break here. So we lifted off, heading back to Cu Chi. And that young sergeant, he looked at me, you know, and I got my helmet on, and he said, were you the gunner that pointed down at this radio operator? And I said, yeah, man, I did. I said, I just caught it. I couldn't see it sooner, and I couldn't do it any faster. And he said, I want you to know that I thank you very much for what you did. He's my good friend, you know. You saved his life. So we're in a helicopter, I pulled him. I said, look, dude, I didn't save anybody's life. You're the one that dove in there. Kept the Cu Chi, flight down into the hospital, receiving helicopter pad, and the medics are there, and these guys are peeling off. That young soldier, that sergeant went up to me and he said, I want to tell you how much what you did for me, because this guy, this radio operator, I mean, this guy, he's distraught, he's in shock. I said, you saved his life, and he's my very best friend. You saved his life. Thank you very much. I said, well, you're welcome. Okay. Well, I found out later that during the dry season, the Vietnamese will take these rice paddies, which are dry, and they'll dig a dry well, if you will. And it's 8, 10 feet across, it's 6 feet down. Here comes the monsoon. It fills these fades. Here you are. Is it 6 inches of water, or is it 6 feet of water? What happened was this radio operator, he jumped off my aircraft and he went 6 feet down. Nobody saw him. Nobody saw him until, again, to repeat myself, the bombing up. So throughout the years, I thought about this. Okay, I don't believe in luck, and I don't believe in coincidence. I really don't. I feel that what I did was intended. I looked down 3, 4 times. They happened to see that one time as we're lifting off. I believe it was intended. It happened. And throughout the years, I keep thinking about those 2 other soldiers. My God, we're all 19 and 20 years old. It's almost 50 years now. And I've often wondered, did they complete their tours? Did they have a full life like me? Are they 50 years older? And did they put on a few pounds? Yeah, we did. But it was just a typical day in Vietnam.
Youth Crew Wolverton.
Thank you. When I first learned what unconditional love really felt like, it's when I fell in love with a veteran. His name was Jake, and he was 31 years at the time, and he was coming back from his 3rd deployment, his second in Afghanistan. I was 25 and transitioning out of graduate school, so we were both in these different life transitions. So we had this daily routine where we would go to Brownstone, and we had a mutual friend there who was a barista. So one day we ended up at the same coffee table. So when I first saw him, I'm not going to lie, it wasn't love at first sight, although he may have another story. But he had the more kind of bro, I lift weights type. I was more kind of the hippie, I want to save the world type. But he sat down next to me and we started talking. And we talked about everything from war to yoga to travel. And so I started to get a little bit more curious about him, that there was a little bit more to him. So then we had realized that we had both booked one-way ticket journey trips. He was going to Eastern Europe, beginning in Poland, and I was going to Guatemala in Central America. And we both were leaving on the same day, May 19th. So coincidence couldn't even begin to describe what we were experiencing. So we continued to talk, and then we ended up leaving. So a little later on, he ended up texting me asking if I wanted to get lunch. So I was still trying to test him out a little bit. So I wanted to see where he wanted to pick for lunch. So I'm a vegan, I don't have a lot of options, and I thought he would pick a steakhouse. So I said, sure, pick wherever you want to go. So he said, what do you think about Horrocks? And if there's one thing, if you really know me, I'm either outside in nature somewhere or I'm at Horrocks. You can always find me there. So to say the least, I was excited. So I ended up going there and meeting him. And of course, he's arriving on military time, 10 minutes early. I'm arriving on what I call Ruth time, which he had some issues with, which is 10 minutes later. So he's all nervous, I can see that. So I walk and I meet him, and we go in and we have lunch. And we ended up chatting for over 3 hours, and he ended up opening up to me about his time at Fort Knox in the last 2 years, and then started to open up a little bit more about his time in the military. And so I really began to shift my perspective about him and really began to see him opening up and being vulnerable and being honest with me. And so I became more intrigued with him. So we had about a month before we were leaving on our journeys, and so we spent a lot of time together in that month. And it felt like a dream at times, and it was going so quickly. But we were just connecting so deeply, and he was opening up about all these memories, and so we spent as much time as we could before we left. So we ended up going on our journeys, and we kept in touch the whole time. And we were mostly writing emails or through Facebook. I was in a kind of a limited technology area. So we did the best that we could to keep in touch. And within 2 months of being apart, we started writing, I love you. And although we were halfway around the world, and it didn't make sense that we were in love with each other at this point, we had spent more time apart than together. But we knew in our hearts what was true for us. And so Jake had decided that he wanted to come and see me, and I, at the time, was teaching yoga in Nicaragua. So he had booked a ticket to come down there, and we were going to go travel to Central and South America together. And that's when he had learned that the cancer had come back. So a year prior, he had been diagnosed with tongue cancer, and now the cancer had spread to the neck. So he flew back to the US, and then I was in Nicaragua finishing up my time teaching, and I had to figure out what I was going to do. Was I going to stay, or was I going to go back and be with him? So as I took some time to figure this out and really listen to my heart, I realized that I had to go back. And so I booked, within a couple weeks, I ended up booking my ticket back home. So here we are, facing the reality of love, war, cancer together. And I was also facing the reality of, I was in love with a veteran, but I was also facing the reality that I had to love Jake in his darkness just as much as he had to love me in my darkness too. And so the next few months were really transforming for both of us. He ended up doing chemo and radiation at the VA hospice center, or at the VA center in Ann Arbor. And this was my first time really being exposed to the VA center. And so I remember like going to the waiting area where they wait for you to call your number, and sitting with him, next to him, and watching and seeing other veterans and their spouses sitting next to them. And there was always this common bond we had each other, that we didn't even have to speak, that we sat next to the veteran, that we loved to support them. And so it really opened my eyes to the realities that veterans have to face coming back home, as well as their significant others and their partners, what they have to go through as well. So Jake remained very optimistic through the chemo and the radiation, but he still experienced a lot during that time too, of going through the anxiety, the flashbacks, all the kind of common things you hear about that veterans go through. And so he had finished his treatment and he had come back home and was kind of getting ready for chapter 2. So he's taking the winter months to heal, and I was taking the winter months to recover myself as well and work before we figured out what we were going to do next. And so it was in this time that we became even deeper with each other, and he really began to open up even more about being in the war. And one thing that I realized when he shared these stories with me, which was difficult for me as a girlfriend at the time, to hear about how he missed the war, how he missed being a soldier, and how he wanted to go back. But at this point in his and so what I realized was this brotherhood that he had experienced was unlike any other relationship he was ever going to have in his life. And so he needed to maintain that connection. So I encouraged him to seek out ways to continue to maintain that connection. And so he ended up being at the Haven later on and volunteering and working with veterans. And so as the months went on, it was the week before we were actually going to move him out to Colorado, because we are planning to move out to Colorado now. And we had found out that cancer had come back for the 3rd time, and this time in the lungs. And so we realized that we wanted to spend the rest of our time together in love and as normal as possible. So we went to doctors, we sought out as much as we could, and at the end of the day, we just realized that we just wanted to spend as much quality time together with family, with friends, and just being in love with one another. And one thing that I realized with Jake coming back from 3 deployments was the one thing that he really wanted to experience was being in love and just being a great partner to someone. And so he did everything that he could to be that partner to me. And so we ended up going on a road trip together and explored a bunch of national parks and spent a lot of time with family too. And to not what we expected, we came home and he and checked him into hospice. And within 3 weeks, he had been transferred to the VA hospice unit, and we ended up getting married. And it was something that we had planned to do even before the diagnosis, and it was something that was just, we knew we were going to do eventually, and it just had come a little bit sooner. But to be honest, it was one of the happiest moments for both of us to have all our family and friends there, even if it was in circumstances that wasn't what we had expected, being 31 and 26 at the time. So I learned a lot from my relationship with Jake. I learned a lot about what veterans need coming back home and how much love and support they just desperately want and need, not even from a partner, but just from family and from friends. And I learned to love a veteran not because of his ability to physically protect me, but because of his mental capability to be the best person that he could be. And I just love that although he wanted to protect me, he wanted to protect everyone. And he made it a point in his life to impact every single person. And it's something that carries through to me today as well. And so Jake continues to be my biggest inspiration as I continue on my healing journey. And I can't tell you today how incredible it is for him and how I know he's looking down at us smiling that we're coming together as a community to share these stories. And so I hope the stories continue to share on. Thank you.
Best way we could end this evening. So from our hearts, we thank you for coming out and joining us. Michelle Frank, you did a phenomenal job. If we can give a round of applause real quick. She worked very hard to make this thing happen, and we love her for it. To all the tellers, you all are amazing. From the bottom of my heart, thank you all for coming out, and we'll see you out in the atrium.
AccessVision. Your voice, your community.